The audio story. The Iron Key. Chapter 1, The Meteorite. It was a dark and dangerous night. The rumble of distant thunder was rapidly approaching and lightning bolts were flashing everywhere, igniting the distant forest as if it were a tinderbox. Ariel knew she had only minutes to complete her task of extracting the star silver from the newly fallen meteorite. "A little help here," she exclaimed. Then, up from the dirt, a black fog arose and wrapped around her, comforting her with a soft hug. It flowed into her arms and down to her fingertips, guiding them in the impossibly complex and delicate task. "Handling this stuff is like trying to pick up blobs of mercury," she sighed. "They keep avoiding me, like I'm trying to hurt them. Have you tried reassuring it?" The black fog whispered in her mind. "Does it need reassuring?" she wondered. "Does it have feelings?" Then she whispered, There, little star, don't be afraid. I will not hurt you. I just want to touch you. Won't you let me do that?" The meteorite's tiny, silvery, liquid veins turned freezing and stiff, shivering slightly as Ariel's fingers traced softly over them. Ariel radiated love toward it, and it reflected love back to her. "See, I'm a friend," she whispered. "Friend." She heard the faint reply in her heart. Ariel gently pulled out the silky, now solidified, liquid crystal veins. The silky veins suddenly coalesced, spinning themselves into a spherical, pearl-like cocoon. There was something inside it. Something that sparkled and danced. Ariel placed the glowing sphere into the magnetic clasp of her golden bracelet. Then she sang a beautiful piercing song, and the crystal cocoon began singing back to her. It slowly increased the pitch of its echo, octave after octave after octave, until even Ariel's super-sensitive ears could no longer hear it. But the approaching storm could. Like the eye of a hurricane, a wide, clear, calm hole formed overhead. The screeching scream of her dragon, Drax, who had been circling impatiently high above the impenetrable layer of electrified storm clouds, suddenly shattered the eerie hush of the storm's eye. Drax plummeted like a feathered lightning bolt and was almost instantly at Ariel's side, nuzzling her affectionately and licking her all over with his long, slobbery tongue. "Yuck. Stop that." She scolded him, but petted his scaly neck lovingly, and added, "I don't need to be clothed in a sparkly, incendiary gown." Drax apologetically tried to lick off some of the glittery slime. "Stop licking me, Drax. You're just making it worse." Ariel sighed as she scraped some of the warm, gooey saliva off her arms and legs. She shook her head and wondered what other bad habits Cynthia had been teaching their shared dragon, Drax. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Cynthia's Makeup. Cynthia turned from side to side as she examined her costume in her makeup mirrors. "You missed a spot on my lower back," she observed. "Fill it in, Drax." Drax licked her back some more, making sure it had a thick layer of sparkly saliva everywhere. "Hey, watch where you're licking," Cynthia exclaimed. "I told you I'd spread your goo by hand down there," she sighed, wondering if Drax was being intentionally mischievous or just sloppy. Drax licked his long tongue between her legs again, trying to remove his misplaced slobber. Cynthia moaned as she turned and stared into his fathomless eyes, then slapped him. "Don't give me that innocent look," she exclaimed, then slapped him again, just for good measure. She knew he was guilty. He knew, too. Then she picked up the princess diadem that Ariel had lent her and slid it into her slimy hair. "Okay, do you understand your part in all this?" she asked Drax. Drax snorted a tiny ball of flame at her, causing her to burst into a ball of blazing fire. "Stupid. Not in here. Are you trying to burn the whole place down?" Cynthia scolded him. Then she clapped her hands together sharply, using her developing witchy power to extinguish the flames. "You're just being difficult, aren't you? Stop your pouting just because Ariel chided you for sliming her. You're only permitted to do that to me, remember?" Drax just tilted his head questioningly. In his mind, they were both his girls, and sometimes he had a hard time telling them apart. "Okay, off you go now to Dragon World, but be ready. It won't be long before I call you back. Remember to make a dramatic entrance, with your flapping wings, fearsome roar, and flaming breath. Then land behind me and set me ablaze. Just like we practiced." Drax snorted his compliance. Cynthia failed to notice the mischievous look forming deep in his eyes. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Ceremony. The stars were already coming out, and the many diverse covens of witches who had arrived at Amazonia were waiting quietly, patiently for Cynthia to appear on the raised portico of the temple. They weren't sure what to expect. Cynthia had invited them all to attend her special evening gathering. A sisterhood ceremony, as she called it. A hush spread through the crowd as a rolling, deep drum roll announced her imminent appearance. Cynthia strode slowly, elegantly out of the temple's portico to the very edge of the stone patio. She scanned the crowd, and they scanned her. They weren't sure if she was stark naked or just wearing a very sheer sparkly gown. She glistened as if she were coated in a thick layer of liquid honey. "Come back now, Drax," Cynthia whispered in her mind. A tiny star started to glow on Cynthia's diadem. Brighter and brighter, it blazed, then whoosh. Her dragon, Drax, rocketed out of the sunspot crystal of her diadem, and rapidly, terrifyingly expanded to his full, fearsome size, screeching as he soared overhead. Then he belched an inferno of flame that filled the night sky, turning it into day. An end-of-the-world type of day. Then he landed behind Cynthia, spread his wings wide, and showered her in a dazzling spray of bright orange sparks. She instantly burst into flames, terrible flames. A considerable segment of the spectators screamed in empathetic agony, then swooned, sinking to the ground unconscious. Cynthia smiled and thought the effect had gone off better than expected. She was just about to raise her hands and assure everyone she was all right when Drax suddenly took wing and grabbed her firmly from behind in his sharp claws, spiraling Cynthia's apparently roasting, burning body higher and higher into the night sky. More and more of the witches were fainting by the minute. When Drax finally dropped her, flaming and screaming, the witches who were still conscious all started screaming too, running wildly in aimless circles, trying to avoid the imminent impact zone and possible fiery explosion. Drax just hovered there, high above, unconcernedly watching his falling princess. He wondered if her panic pee was going to wash off enough of his insufficient slime to actually expose her to the burning fire. If that should happen, he thought, it won't end well for me. So he hyper-dived and gently caught her in his claws long before she cratered into the ground. At least 3 seconds before, and returned her to the patio to finish her presentation. The only witch left standing among the spectators, and still conscious, was an old blind one who wondered what all the commotion was about. Cynthia turned, just stared at Drax in disbelief, and shook her head. Then she staggered off, mumbling something about having to go pee. Drax wondered if he hadn't taken her high enough. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, The Apology. The next night, Kira reconvened the covens. "I'm sorry for whatever stress and pain last night's ceremony may have caused you. I have sent Cynthia and Drax away. They won't trouble you again," she spoke softly. A wave of regret and protest swept through the covens. Sure, they had suffered, but it was out of concern for Cynthia, not hate for her. They all knew that they might not even be here if it wasn't for the previous brave actions of Cynthia and Drax exploring the star shell and finding them. "No, wait," Kira continued. "I didn't send them away as a punishment. They're on a crucial mission for me, to try to do the impossible. To do what no one else has ever been able to do. To find and free the lost souls who are wandering endlessly, hopelessly through the terrible darkness of hell." Kira continued, "On the bottom side of this world there is a dark world where people, who choose not to come to the light, go instead. They are right beneath us, but an unreachable dimension away." Everyone looked down at the ground and their feet. "That's right," Kira continued, "they're so far away, but yet so near. How can we forget and forsake them? Cynthia and Drax have gone down there to try to bring them all home." End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5, The Quest. Kira had asked Cynthia to take a walk with her along the long, sandy beach. Kira bent down and scooped up a handful of sand. "How many grains do you suppose are here?" she asked Cynthia. "Lots," Cynthia answered in her usual, vague, evasive way, not sure where this conversation was headed, and if she was in trouble for something. "And how about all along the whole beach?" Kira persisted. "Lots more," Cynthia smiled. "Do you think you could count them all?" Kira smiled back. "Sure," Cynthia replied, "I'd just scoop up a few, and then have Drax melt all the rest into one big blob. Then there would be a few plus one," she concluded. "You always have an answer for everything, don't you?" Kira smirked. Cynthia just shrugged. "Sometimes the answers are easier than the questions." "That's a pretty deep observation for someone so young," Kira said. "Time is stretchy and shrinky, and apparent age can be deceptive." "But you already know that," Cynthia replied. "So, what is this really all about? Have you ever wondered how the universe actually works?" Kira asked. "Sure, but probably not any more than anyone else." Certainly not as much as you. Cynthia thought she'd slip in a little sweet butter, just in case she really was in trouble. You're not in trouble, my dear, Kira assured her. Well, not yet, but that might come, Kira whispered as she stared off into the future. Now Cynthia was getting nervous. I want you to find the iron key, Kira said. Well, if it's iron, you might use a magnet to attract it, Cynthia suggested. Or a metal detector to find it if it's buried deep. You might even find some gold nuggets while you're searching, she smiled. That's all very helpful, my dear, Kira thanked her. But the iron key is mostly metaphorical. It's a means of communicating with the quantum computer that's running the universe. Oh, is that all it is? Cynthia smiled. Why can't the universe communicate without it? Has the quantum computer lost its cell phone? Or has its battery run down? Or is the cosmic cell tower just out of range? You're funny, Kira sighed, then added, I'm sure it's listening to us right now. Cynthia looked around, somewhat nervously. No offense, she added quickly. I'm sure it has a good reason for not talking to us. It never hurts to add a little more sweet butter, she thought. But then wondered if it even likes butter. Maybe it's a vegan. I'm going to be in trouble, aren't I? Cynthia sighed, then groaned, lots and lots of trouble. Don't worry, my dear. You were born for this. I think you already know that, don't you? Kira asked. Yeah, something has been dogging me my whole life. I've always felt it there, just lurking in the shadows. Maybe it's finally catching up with me. Cynthia agreed. The iron key can be like this sometimes, Kira said, it always prefers you to find it yourself. But serious trouble is brewing in the underworld. So, they've compressed your timeline so you can go down now and fix everything. Kira concluded, smiling nonchalantly, as if fixing the whole world was merely child's play. Cynthia just stared at her and groaned. Somehow Kira's deceptively simple explanation reminded Cynthia of her bad dragon, Drax, and his annoying little slimy licks, always unexpectedly slithering in where and when they shouldn't. So, that's how it's going to be. Cynthia grumbled. I'm going to get super slimed, aren't I? Isn't that just peachy keen? She moaned and shook her head. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6, The Sound Barrier. Ariel said to Cynthia, Here, take my bracelet, it'll help you get through the dimensional barrier. Do you remember the song I taught you? I've been practicing it, but my voice isn't enchanting like yours. Cynthia sighed, then added, However, I've noticed my voice is higher now after all my terrified screaming when Drax dropped me through the sky. I think it's actually a little more melodious and prettier now. But, no thanks to you, you bad dragon. She gave Drax a punch in his neck. Drax just snorted, innocently. Yeah, as if. Cynthia groaned. I'm sure you'll be alright. Ariel encouraged her. Why don't you try singing to the star pearl now and we'll see if it answers you. Cynthia cleared her throat, then, holding the bracelet up in front of her mouth, she began singing the secret song. Parix Udu. Voyana Valpan. Jomi Porosha. No. Your voice has to be higher, Ariel interrupted. That's as high as I can go. Cynthia protested. Drax stuck out his long tongue and licked Cynthia between her legs. Cynthia screamed, closing her fist, ready to give Drax a good one. The star pearl suddenly repeated her scream, echoing it higher and higher and higher in frequency. Cynthia had to cover her ears. She thought they were going to explode. Hey, I think you finally got it, my dear. Ariel congratulated her. Cynthia just shook her head and groaned as she stared into Drax's eyes. She scolded him, You're a bad, very bad dragon. But she didn't punch him. She hugged him and gave him a pat instead. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7, The Ferry. Kira said to Cynthia and Drax, I'm not exactly sure of the route you should take, but I think you should fly far out over the inland sea until you find the interdimensional portal. If you can't find it, then return, and we'll try something else. Cynthia was dressed in Ariel's silvery fire suit, and wearing her princess diadem and star pearl bracelet. Drax was wearing his long-distance saddle with well-packed saddlebags. Ariel and Kira waved goodbye and shouted, Farewell. Then Ariel added, Take care of our dragon, Cynthia. Kira then cupped her hands and shouted, Take care of your princess, Drax, and good luck finding the iron key, Cynthia. Drax took flight and looped around them. Cynthia waved goodbye and blew them a kiss. Then they soared away, far out over the unexplored sea, and eventually disappeared. They flew for hours until a tiny island finally emerged on the distant horizon. They veered toward it, and as it grew bigger and bigger, they were surprised by what they saw. There were the usual sandy beaches with palm trees, but atop the central hill, there was an unexpected, shining white palace. They circled the palace and landed in the front courtyard. "It's open," Cynthia said, "let's go in." They walked up a long flight of stone stairs. When they got to the top, they found a large, beautiful fountain with 12 arcing streams of water splashing onto a central crystal sphere. Cynthia and Drax both stared in wonder. The dancing splashes were mystically musical and totally enchanting. The star pearl on Cynthia's bracelet suddenly started singing back to the fountain's crystal sphere. They seemed to be communicating. Cynthia held up her bracelet to get a closer look. As she watched and listened, she slowly understood what they were saying to each other. "They are arguing," Cynthia translated for Drax. "Whether or not to let us in." "In where?" Drax wondered. "Into the crystal," Cynthia answered Drax's thought. "What? That little sphere?" Drax exclaimed. "I don't think I'll fit. It's just like the diadem's sunspot crystal that takes you to Dragon World." Cynthia explained, then mused, "I always wondered what that would be like to be shrunk down like Alice in Wonderland." Then she said, "I guess I'm going to find out." They've agreed to let us in. The star pearl separated from Cynthia's bracelet and hovered in front of them. It began growing bigger and bigger, or maybe they were just shrinking smaller and smaller, Cynthia wasn't sure. Then they were sucked inside it. Standing before them was a beautiful fairy. "I'm your fairy," the fairy said. "I'm going to transport you through the dimensional barrier and ferry you to your destination." The star pearl then flew inside the fountain's crystal sphere and passed through a multitude of rainbow-colored layers, finally emerging into an empty black space with many tiny specks of scattered, colored lights. They began flying past the lights, faster and faster and faster until they stretched into the colored threads of some strange, four-dimensional fabric. Then they decelerated without inertia, and just ahead of them they saw a large, barely glowing sun. It was a dark red, rusty color, and so dim she could look straight at it without squinting. The fairy slowed her ship and came to a stop above a dark, almost black planet that they could barely make out against the surrounding blackness of space. "Is this where we're going?" Cynthia asked. "How can anyone live here?" The fairy just bowed her head slightly and spread her hands, as if she were apologizing for something. "This is the dark world," she said, as if that statement explained everything. Then she continued, "Be very careful, there are unknown dangers down there." Cynthia wondered how she knew that. That's not even logical, she thought. How can she know the unknown? Maybe it's some sort of weird fairy intuition. She mused. The fairy repeated her warning, "Be careful." Then she dropped them into the upper atmosphere and returned to Cynthia's bracelet. "Not again." Cynthia screamed as she began free-falling. It took Drax just a few seconds to hyperdive and gently come up under Cynthia, letting her lock securely into his saddle and take the reins. "Thank you, baby." Cynthia sighed and kissed his neck. "Here we go." Then, as an afterthought, she said, "You better activate your cloaking device, Drax." Drax gave the little squeak that his electronic camouflage unit was tuned to accept, and they vanished from sight. Not that anyone can see us in this darkness anyway, Cynthia thought, but then remembered how cats and bats have ways of finding and catching their prey even in the dark. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, Finding the Iron Key. Cynthia and Drax secretly, silently explored the whole planet, discovering what was really going on down there. Cynthia finally steered Drax back up high and said to the fairy, "Take us back inside your ship." The star pearl separated from Cynthia's bracelet and pulled them in. "I want to go home," Cynthia exclaimed, then sighed and whispered, "But I don't think I can." Then she continued, "How can anyone endure these conditions? I don't care how bad these people were, or still are. No one deserves to have to live like that. How can the powers that be allow this?" Drax was wondering the same thing. He had spotted a young female dragon who was chained down, and he had turned toward her, but Cynthia steered him back on course, at first wondering where he was going, then seeing the little dragon, Cynthia said, "Not yet, Drax, you can come back soon." The fairy looked deep into Cynthia's eyes, then answered her question. "There has never been an iron key to help in this dimension before. This realm has been totally isolated from all the higher worlds until now." "Before what? Why now?" Cynthia wondered. Then, the lightning struck. She suddenly understood what the fairy was implying. "I'm the Iron Key," she gasped. "Yes, and I'm your first Ferris fairy," the fairy said proudly. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9, Preparing for Battle. If you're my fairy, Cynthia said, then you should have a name. I'm going to call you Aronda. How does that sound? I've never had a name, the fairy replied. That sounds wonderful. Okay, I think you already know our names, but just to be clear, I'm Cynthia, and this is my bad dragon, Drax. She smiled. Drax snorted, hello. Aronda curtsied to both of them. You can make things bigger and smaller, can't you? Cynthia asked. Yes, within reason, Aronda answered. Well, how big can you make Drax? Cynthia wondered. Well, pretty damn big, Aronda replied, trying out a new vocabulary that she seemed to absorb from Cynthia. How big? 2 or 3 times his normal size? Cynthia asked. 200 or 300 times, at least. Aronda announced proudly. If you call up more fairies, we could make him easily 1,000 times bigger. Well, let's not get carried away, Cynthia said, let's try 10 times bigger to start. Cynthia suggested, then added, Drax can be clumsy and I don't want to get stepped on or inhaled by mistake. Drax just snorted his objections. Just making sure you're paying attention, Drax, Cynthia smiled. What about his increased weight? Cynthia asked. If he's 10 times bigger, then he'll weigh 1,000 times more, won't he? Cynthia asked Aronda. I can reduce his inertial and gravitational mass by whatever factor you like, Aronda said. That way he can still fly, and won't be just a big turkey turnip. Aronda said with a smile. Cynthia and Drax just stared at her. Aronda was becoming funny. She was changing, not so formal and matter-of-fact anymore. Well, let's make him 10 times bigger, and maybe just triple his normal weight, and see how he handles that. Cynthia said. Yes, that should give him about 33 times his normal strength, Aronda estimated. Drax was wondering if anyone was going to ask his opinion. So he snorted a fireball over their heads, reminding them he should be included in the definitely dubious plans. Oh, sorry, Drax. Cynthia apologized, but added, I know you want to rescue that little dragon. However, I saw how things are being done down there, and I think you are going to have to fight for her. And I doubt it's going to be a fair fight, so let's prepare a little surprise contingency, just in case. Drax spent the next few hours trying out various combinations of size, weight, and strength. I think he's having too much fun. Cynthia sighed as she and Aronda watched Drax perform all kinds of aerobatics, stirring up tornadoes, and electrifying the air into lightning bolts that danced off his wingtips. He finally decided that their original proportions were the best. 10 times bigger, 3 times more massive, and 33 times stronger. He's going to be a holy terror. Cynthia smiled proudly. Aronda wasn't sure what she meant by that. I hope he's not going to hurt anyone. She expressed her concern. Oh, I doubt it'll come to that, Cynthia assured her. But bluffing your badness can sometimes be useful. Kira taught me that. However, no matter how big and powerful Drax becomes, he is still going to have one fatal weakness. That weakness is me, Cynthia said. If I'm captured and held hostage, Drax won't do anything that risks harming me. He'll allow himself to be captured instead. Then the evil forces will do whatever they want to do to both of us. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Aronda said. Since you've arrived, all the Ferris fairies have been awakening. You are becoming their own key, the natural consequence of being the Iron Key. Cynthia smiled at Aronda's little play on words. But Aronda wasn't smiling. She looked dead serious. What are you talking about? Cynthia asked. Well, every iron atom is a sleeping Ferris fairy, just like me, Aronda explained. As soon as you entered this dimension, you started awakening them. How many fairies are here? Cynthia wondered. Aronda paused, wrinkling her brow in concentration, as if she were trying to count them all. She finally just sighed and said, lots. Oh, like grains of sand on a beach, lots. Cynthia remembered Kira's talk. Lots more. We're talking atoms here, Aronda exclaimed, then added, you can forget about trying to name them all. There aren't enough letters in your alphabet, unless you give them really, really long names. Besides, we're all the same, so you can just call them all by my name. And what would you, and the other fairies, do if we were about to be captured or injured? Cynthia asked Aronda. We would do whatever would be necessary to protect you, Aronda said. Would you hurt them? Cynthia asked. There are many possibilities that don't involve permanent personal harm, and that don't seriously override their free will and free choice. Aronda answered. Give me an example, Cynthia said. Well, I could just transport you and Drax out of there. You'd just disappear into my ship, Aronda answered. Is there a chance that you would just kill them all? Cynthia pressed her further. Only if you commanded it. Aronda answered. Then she asked, but you wouldn't make us do that, would you? I'm not here to kill anyone. They sent me here to help. I'm just not sure how I'm going to do that. Cynthia sighed. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10, Dragon Deal. Can you disguise me so I look and talk like one of the locals? Cynthia asked Aronda. Well, the clothes are easy, and you want a built-in translator for their language. That will be a little trickier, but I think I can do it. Aronda said. Give me a moment while I get permission. Permission from whom? Cynthia asked. From Omar, the director. Aronda answered. Director of what? Cynthia persisted. Of everything, of course, silly, she said, as if that should be obvious to the Iron Key. Let me talk to this Omar directly, Cynthia insisted. Well, you are. I'm your communication link. I'm Omar's voice, so to speak, Aronda explained. She hears everything you're saying, and I relay her answer to you. Think of me as your personal smartphone. What if your battery dies? Cynthia asked. I tap into the deep directly. I can't run out of energy. Aronda explained. I'm a fairy. Cynthia mumbled something about homonym hell, wondering if homonyms would eventually cause the universe to collapse because of some misunderstood directive. So, I've been talking with this Omar all along, and not you. Cynthia wanted some clarification. There was no personal me until you gave me my name, Aronda smiled proudly. Cynthia just groaned, not sure she understood anything any better now. So, what's Omar's answer? Cynthia sighed in capitulation. Okay. I have permission to do it. Aronda exclaimed and touched Cynthia's throat and then her ears. You now have a built-in universal translator, and will be able to speak in, and understand, any language. Say something to me in Dragon, Cynthia addressed Drax in his native language. Drax just stared at her, then sighed, finally. I was getting a little tired of trying to understand all your dubious, contradictory mental and verbal directives. Slime me. Don't slime me. Now you can finally say it in Dragon and stop punching me when I get it wrong. Oh, sorry, Cynthia apologized. Then she looked deep into his eyes and suddenly exclaimed, You devious devil. You've always understood everything. And she punched him in his neck. As if that little feathery tickle hurts me. Drax snorted his laughter. I heard that. Cynthia said. Okay, Aronda, dress me like one of the locals. Aronda disguised Cynthia, then produced a few mirrors so she could see her costume. Looks pretty good, Cynthia said. Now what about Drax, if he needs to transform to his larger size? Aronda materialized a small, star-shaped, glowing crystal and embedded it in Drax's head between his horns. Now either you, or Drax, merely need to think, or say, Terra Dragon. And he will transform instantly. Just make sure he's not inside a confined space, or the surrounding structure will be decimated when Drax expands. When Drax wants to return to his normal size, the command is, itsy bitsy teeny weeny, Aronda smiled. Cynthia just shook her head, wondering where Aronda was getting her new colorful vocabulary. Well, Drax, are you ready to rescue that cute little dragon? Cynthia smiled, implying what Drax was thinking. They took flight and headed toward the location where they had seen the captured dragon. Drax landed beside the stone pen where the little dragon was chained down. She looked up at Drax and Cynthia, a mixture of astonishment and hope in her eyes. Suddenly, a squad of soldiers with long spears approached and quickly surrounded them. Who are you? What do you want? Their leader demanded. Then he ordered one of the soldiers to summon their lord. A rather fat, but elegantly dressed, and obviously revered, or feared, lord approached from the castle, closely surrounded by a fearsome troop of bodyguards. Welcome to my domain, strangers, he began, noting they were not from around there, and wondering what power, or witchy spell, the curious girl held over the dragon in order to ride it. What is it you're seeking? He asked, glancing at his captured female dragon. We would like to buy your dragon. Cynthia waved toward her. Well, obviously, she's not for sale. Once she reaches breeding age, I'm going to expand my dragon forces and seize command of this planet. He countered with his slightly veiled salesperson's spiel. Everything has a price. Cynthia countered. Name yours, anything you want. Within reason, she added. Well, when there's a bargaining impasse, a stalemate, we usually settle it with a contest. Why don't your dragon and mine fight for her? If your dragon wins, you get to keep her. If my dragon wins, I get to keep your dragon. And you must become my servant girl. the Lord added, grinning lewdly. Cynthia narrowed her eyes, ready to punch him, but she didn't. She regarded his surrounding guards with their hands on their swords. How is the victor determined? Cynthia asked. When one dragon is knocked unconscious. Or killed, he added. But that is always an unfortunate, lost asset outcome, so no one wants that. Unless, of course, there's a secondary prize, he sneered, imagining Cynthia chained naked at the foot of his bed. Agreed. Cynthia said and nodded, but declined to shake his extended hand. Agreed then, he said, withdrawing his unshook hand, but smiling deviously. Take your dragon to our little Colosseum. He pointed to a large stone structure in the distance. I'll see if I can find my dragon. We'll be there shortly. A host of peasant spectators quickly filled the seats of the not-so-little Colosseum. Where did they all come from? Cynthia wondered as they all booed and hooted at Drax, who was looking pretty small and lonely, standing on the rough wooden floor in the center of the arena. End of Chapter 10. Chapter 11, Dragon Battle. Cynthia scanned the rowdy crowd with curiosity. Most of the peasants were dressed in shabby garments. Some men were arguing, obviously already drunk, sloshed on some homemade concoction they were swilling from crudely made earthen pottery. At the back, in the higher bleachers, young children were silently watching, wishing they had a tame dragon, like the one in the center of the arena, that the young girl had flown in on. Some of the young girls had tears streaming down their unwashed faces, anticipating how this fiasco was going to end. There was a sudden, throbbing, ominous beating on big drums whose stretched skins were the hides of previous victims of this impending debacle. Then the large gates in the far wall of the Colosseum creaked open to the booming, bellowing roars of a colossal, three-headed dragon that emerged, provoking the crowd into a frenzy of wild cheering. Drax and Cynthia both just stared at it. Neither of them had ever seen such an awesome creature. Drax was strategically sizing it up. Sure, it had 3 big scary heads, all with sharp fangs, but its enormous size rendered it relatively slow in its maneuvers. And it appeared to be favoring its rear left leg, which displayed a partially healed, deep scar of some recent battle. The 3-headed dragon was also closely watching Drax, sizing up this unusual opponent. Drax's wings were entirely whole, showing no battle scars at all. It's young and inexperienced, he thought. I'll attack with my central head, and when it's engaged, I'll spring a pincer move with my 2 side heads. That was his usual devious strategy that typically yielded victory. Drax was thinking, I can't get caught in the middle of its 3 heads. I'll have to disable the side heads first before I engage in a frontal attack. Drax took wing and swept around to the 3 heads left side, biting its rear leg on its tender scar. When the 3 heads screamed and reached around to defend itself, Drax grabbed its left head in his powerful jaws and bit down hard, disabling that head. Then Drax swooped around to the dragon's right side and repeated the attack. It wasn't so easy this time, but Drax finally also overpowered the dragon's right head. It hung limp and unconscious, like the left head. Now it's a fair fight, Drax thought as he flew up high to gain some attack momentum. Then he plunged down toward the dragon's remaining head, blazing a bolt of searing fire ahead of him as he attacked. Drax expected returning fire, but none came. No one had ever seen a dragon breathe fire before, and the spectators screamed in terror. The 3-headed dragon collapsed unconscious on the ground. You won, Drax, Cynthia shouted, jumping up and down as his only cheerleader, but with no one to lead. Then the Lord stood up from his balcony seat and signaled to his archers, who had been hiding around the perimeter. Hundreds of arrows trailing strong, thin cables started flying over Drax, anchoring their tips in the wooden floor and ensnaring him in a tangled, insidious net. More and more cables came, seemingly endlessly, covering Drax in a dense, immobilizing web. The Lord nodded in satisfaction at his new prize, then pointed at Cynthia and said, "Seize her." His soldiers dragged her, kicking and screaming, up to his reserved prime view box. So, you thought you could cheat me with your fire-breathing dragon? The Lord chuckled. I had always assumed the myths and legends were only superstitious old wives' tales, but now I see they're really real. He was envisioning himself leading a flight of fire-breathing dragons soon to be bred from his adolescent female dragon. And maybe a squadron of elite warriors, bred from this feisty wench. He snickered and pinched Cynthia's boobie. You're going to be sorry. You bloated tub of treacherous turd. Cynthia threatened him. He and his soldiers all broke into raucous laughter at her colorful, barmaid, vindictive insult. I hope she's as entertaining in bed. The Lord chuckled. Cynthia was wondering why Drax was hesitating. Is it some sort of dragon honor, not to employ devious tricks? She just sighed, then spoke aloud in a voice as threatening as she could muster, making sure everyone around her heard. Terra Dragon, she commanded. A strange symphony of twanging, snapping cables began as Drax expanded to his monster size. He then blazed a soul-melting inferno of white-hot plasma in a circle around him, disintegrating to dust all the remaining tethers. Then his deafening, booming shriek cracked and shattered every wall of the Colosseum. Drax paced slowly, terrifyingly toward Cynthia. The Lord and his soldiers were now all on their knees, trembling and begging Cynthia to spare them. All the other spectators had already vanished into hiding, hoping this terrible terror wouldn't find them and punish them for participating in the botched insult of his obviously divine being. Drax towered over them, staring down ominously. His exposed, sharp teeth were still dripping with the three-headed dragon's blood, and his eyes were blazing with anger toward those who had dared to touch and threaten his girl, Cynthia. Drax roared and ejected a disintegrating spear of plasma at the perpetrators and vaporized every one of them. "Stop it, Drax!" Cynthia screamed, but she was too late. When she turned around, all that remained of the Lord and his bodyguards were traces of smoking dust. End of Chapter 11. Chapter 12, Rumors. The next day, the rumors were spreading like gale-blown wildfire, reaching towns and villages far and wide. The Terra Dragon devoured them all. Some said. Others said. Cynthia had used her witchy magic to turn them into little flying bugs. Some archers who claimed to have seen it all from the periphery and who were lucky enough to have escaped with their lives reported. The fire-breathing dragon turned into a mountainous monster and incinerated the Lord and all his guards, with one flaming breath. No matter how it happened, new masters were now here to rule over them. Everyone accepted that new reality without even a whisper of a challenge. Who knows what that witch and her dragon might hear and what that Terra Dragon might do? No one wanted a surprise visit from it, or her, in the night. "Why didn't you just rescue us and sweep us away in your ship?" Cynthia challenged Aronda. "Oma told me not to do that." Aronda apologized. Oma said, "There isn't time to be diplomatic. So, a demonstration is necessary." "Sounds rather cold," Cynthia said. "Sometimes, cold is necessary, especially when a supernova is about to blow." Aronda responded. "What does that mean?" Cynthia asked. "Do you remember all that rumbling thunder you were hearing last night? Those were shockwaves of plasma from the sun. It's about to implode, then explode and vaporize this planet. And everyone on it," Aronda added in a whisper. "Well, that really sucks," Cynthia exclaimed. Then she closed her eyes and became very still as she wondered what she was going to do now. Then she asked Aronda, "There are lots of iron atoms in the sun, aren't there?" "Zillions," Aronda answered. "And they're all my fairies, right?" Cynthia asked. "Well, most of them. Some of them are still sleeping," Aronda answered. "Then I think it's time to awaken all my solar fairies." Cynthia smiled. "Can you fly us through the corona of the sun?" "I think I can adjust my ship to do that," Aronda said, then asked, "What are you planning on doing?" "We're going to plant some trees." Cynthia smiled. "Some iron plasma trees." Then she began her explanation. "If we can prevent the sun's iron core from building up by having the iron atoms, who are my ferrous fairies, grow from the core of the sun to the corona, as sun trees, then they can brighten and condense the giant red sun into a smaller, cozy, yellow one. Then more things than mushrooms, black grass, and bitter berries will grow on this gloomy planet." End of Chapter 12. Chapter 13, The Little Dragon. When Drax discovered that the wing tendons of the little dragon had been severed so she couldn't fly away and would have to remain a breeding dragon forever, he roared such a terrifying, thunderous bellow that people for miles around first froze in fear, then ran lickety-split to hide themselves in the deepest, darkest holes they could find. If Cynthia hadn't commanded Drax not to harm anyone else while she and Aronda were away doing their thing on the sun, she would have returned to a very different, very scorched, world. Drax helped the little dragon climb onto his back, and then he flew away with her high into the sky. She told Drax her name was Zondra, and Drax said he was Drax. She had never had so much fun in her whole life as she did on that flight with him. Drax flew Zondra all around the day side of the planet, showing her all the interesting sights that were now becoming visible as the sun was slowly changing from its large, dim red size to a smaller, brighter, yellowish-green star. End of Chapter 13. Chapter 14, Girl Talk. When Cynthia and Aronda returned from their tree planting endeavors on the sun, Drax and Zondra joined them in Iander's bubble ship. The greetings were cordial but concerned. Cynthia and Aronda shared Drax's pain at Zondra's terrible, incapacitating wounds. But Zondra seemed unexpectedly upbeat. She was forming a deep, affectionate bond with Drax, who had risked his life rescuing her. And when she flew with him on his back, she would spread her wings and pretend that she was flying with him. Cynthia finally sent Drax on a brief trip to gather some samples of the native vegetation, so she and Aronda could examine him and Zondra could explain which species were edible. Besides, we need some girl time to get better acquainted, Cynthia said to Drax. Drax, like all males, never understood what that meant exactly, but knew that he had to yield to the request, or there would be unspecified, unpleasant consequences for his subsequent amorous liaisons with his affectionate amour. After Drax departed, Cynthia said to Zondra, Aronda can heal your wounds, so you'll be able to fly again on your own. That will be nice, thank you, Zondra said, but can you make the healing process very gradual so I can still fly with Drax for a while? That's just what I was thinking, Cynthia said. Drax needs this. He's a bit hard-hearted, and will benefit greatly by expressing concern for, and taking care of others. End of Chapter 14. Chapter 15, Absolute Power. You've heard the saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Cynthia asked Aronda. Yes. Aronda answered, waiting for the rest of Cynthia's question. I have absolute power, more or less, over all you Ferris fairies, correct? Cynthia asked, then she continued, don't you realize how stupid that is? I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing, and how terribly I might unintentionally mess everything up. It is, as you say, more or less, Aronda answered. All your commands are cleared with Oma first before we enact them. Oh, well that's better, Cynthia sighed. If anything goes wrong then I can blame you. Ultimately, yes, Aronda agreed. But you are the Iron Key. Oma expects you to do the right things. But to reiterate, I have no idea what I'm doing, Cynthia sighed. Well, what you want to happen is your responsibility. How it's going to happen is ours. We know that your knowledge is limited, but you know what you like, what seems right to you. That is your power, to imagine good things. Our power is to materialize them for you, Aronda explained. Well, that's a load off, Cynthia sighed. I actually thought I was going to have to do something. Well, you are going to have to do everything, Aronda corrected. Without your guidance, nothing is going to happen, at least nothing world-changing. It'll just be the same old randomness. Chaos ruling instead. So, what you're saying is, I can get into trouble, without actually being in trouble. Cynthia smiled. Sounds heavenly. End of Chapter 15. Chapter 16, Getting into Trouble. I was wondering, Aronda, are there any uninhabited islands far out in the inland sea of Amazonia? Cynthia asked. Lots, Aronda answered. Here's a chart of the islands closest to the trans-dimensional portal we came through. Cynthia examined the map with curiosity and exclaimed, wow. There are lots. What's this big one over here? Cynthia pointed. That's an island continent, kind of like Australia. Aronda answered. Do you have any actual photos of it? Cynthia asked. I can arrange a virtual flying tour of it for you, Aronda said. Sit back and relax. Put on this 3D digital headset and you can fly anywhere you like. Just steer with your hands, left, right, up, or down. Wow, this is great, Cynthia exclaimed. After about an hour of playing Supergirl, Cynthia sighed, took off the virtual goggles, and asked, can I have that continent? Well, if you are the first person to explore it, then I guess you can claim ownership. Aronda answered. Okay, Cynthia sighed, can you make a permanent portal between that island and this world? Aronda thought about it for a few moments. Cynthia assumed she was discussing it with Oma. Aronda finally said, well, it's possible. What are you planning on doing? I want to terraform this awakening planet with some of the flora and fauna from Amastralia. That's what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to name this world Darloka. I want the portal to allow land, sea, and air creatures to easily transition between the two places. People, as well. The people of Darloka are already having some difficulty adapting to your new, brighter sun. They're not ready to visit Amastralia, Aronda cautioned Cynthia. Well, can't you devise some DNA virus, or something, that can quickly make the necessary changes to all the inhabitants of this world, to level things out? Cynthia asked, then added, call in some more fairies if you need to. Some is an understatement, Aronda sighed. Busy fairies are happy fairies. Cynthia smiled. You just made that up. Aronda groaned. End of chapter 16. Chapter 17, Into More Trouble. It would be nice if each person on this new world, Darloka, had a personal helper to aid them in adapting to these changing conditions. Cynthia said. Why don't you assign a personal fairy to each person? Then I can use those fairies to communicate with everyone, addressing the entire population all at once, keeping everybody up to date about what's happening here, and on our twin island country, Amastralia. Well, you're adapting to your new role as Divine Empress quite easily, I see, Aronda observed wryly. Am I becoming too much? Cynthia wondered. I expect you to tell me if I am. No, it's just that you're falling into your new role so fast and easily. It's a bit surprising, Aronda observed. Have you done this before? It's strange you ask that, Cynthia replied. Because I was wondering the same thing. Somehow, all this seems vaguely familiar. It's like a replay from some long-forgotten dream. May I scan your memories of your past lives? Aronda asked. You can do that? Cynthia asked. Is that a yes? Aronda wondered, not sure of Cynthia's words. What if I say no? Will you be offended? Cynthia asked. I'm only trying to help you, Aronda said. Why are you getting so upset? Maybe I don't want to remember my past. Cynthia said flatly. Oh, sorry, Aronda said, then asked, are we having an argument? This is a new experience for me. Well, if you start looking through my past lives, you may have some new experiences that you'd wish you hadn't. Cynthia warned, sensing some terrible darkness she had exiled to the back of her mind long, long ago. End of chapter 17. Chapter 18, Really Getting into Trouble. How much longer until Earth is consumed by its collapsing universe? Cynthia asked Aronda. Not long now, Aronda replied. A few weeks. Well, that really, really sucks. Cynthia groaned, then became very still and silent as she sank into deep meditation. About an hour later, Cynthia opened her eyes and said, I want you to open a portal connecting Earth to us here on Darloka. Then she continued, get ready to transport Earth's moon here, putting it in orbit around Darloka, and then transport Amazonia from inside the Earth to inside the moon. Oh, is that all? Aronda asked wryly. Well, I also want you to adjust the relative positions of the transported moon and our new sun so they look like Earth's moon and sun. Then Cynthia added as an afterthought. And do it all in a way that doesn't disrupt life on Darloka and Amazonia. Then Cynthia added. I know things on Earth are going to be upset when the moon is removed, but I don't want you to do all this until I've had a chance to speak to all the inhabitants of Earth and offer them the chance to come here to Darloka. And to be able to do that, I want you to assign a personal fairy to every human on Earth, to ferry them here. And what would you like to order for dessert? Aronda asked dryly. Oh, I'll get around to that later. Cynthia smiled, then added, I don't know if Oma is going to be destroyed with Earth's universe. If so, then have her transport herself to this universe. Cynthia thought that would only be fair. End of chapter 18. Chapter 19, Revelation. While Cynthia was in her hour-long meditative state, Oma updated Aronda about Cynthia's past. Cynthia doesn't know it, but she was adopted and her parents aren't her real, biological parents. Her mothers are the two Gaias who created this dark world and this universe, and who alternately inhabited the biological body that gave birth to Cynthia. Her mothers and her father, Johannes, then moved to this universe's Lake of Souls. They have requested that we take special care of Cynthia and help her become what she is destined to be. And what is that? Aronda asked. As you have already stated, the Divine Empress of this universe. I was, just kidding, Aronda replied. Well, your fairy intuition is developing too, Oma said. Then added, you're going to have to tell her about her great-grandfather's moonship, and the fact that she has inherited it, and when she moves it, the Earth's magnetic core, which is a part of it, will move too, collapsing the Earth to its original, smaller, water-covered state. Not that any of that really matters for Earth, because the total collapse of Earth's universe is imminent. The moonship's iron core needs to be inserted into this planet, Darloka, to act as a magnetic solar wind shield. That insertion is going to have to be done very delicately, not to disrupt this world too much. Have the fairies handle that. They can temporarily elasticize everything, letting this expanding planet slowly adjust and settle into its new configuration. Cynthia's becoming a bit of a thing, isn't she? Aronda sighed. She's becoming Divine Empress, and you are her prime fairy, so big things are expected of you both, Oma concluded. End of this story about the Iron Key.